Today we are going to build a best, clean and production-ready authentication setup. Whether you are building a SaaS, an internal tool or startup, authentication is one of those things you have to get right and without spending too much time on it. In this video I will show you free and open source authentication stack built with TanStack Start, Better Auth and PostgreSQL. We will go step by step and cover what Better Auth is and why it's useful, credential-based and provider authentication, how to easily sync Auth with your database, and how to use Auth plugins to add advanced features like Google OAuth in just a few minutes. When you're building your product, you at minimum need to store users, accounts, cause user can enter your system either with credential-based authentication or Google OAuth, GitHub authentication, right? And if user use one email, essentially this is the one user but multiple accounts. The other thing, this is the sessions and verifications as well. And all of these things have to be secure, scalable and easy to maintain. And this is exactly where Better Auth comes in. It's a free, as I said, open source, has a strong community, it's fast to set up, and it seamlessly works with your database. Another thing I really like about Better Auth is how flexible it is with providers. So you can add pretty much any provider you want, depends on your product needs, from the classic ones like Google, Apple, GitHub, GitLab, to more niche product focused ones like LinkedIn, Microsoft, Reddit, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, Vercel, Slack and etc. right? And the other thing, you can integrate Better Auth with any full stack applications like Next, Nuxt, TanStack Start, or if you're deal with backend, you can use Express, Next.js, Fastify and etc. And this is really nice. So let's build something. The first what we have to do is install Better Auth, Drizzle ORM and PG to our application. I already installed it, so I will skip this step. The second one, you have to add Better Auth secret to your end file. You can go to the documentation and here you can click generate secret and paste to your end file. By the way, I already have it, so I also skip this step. And also you have to add base URL for your application. The next thing what we have to do is create an Auth instance in our lib or utils directory. So let's jump to our code, and I've created an auth.ts file inside utils directory, and then I've created an Auth instance using Better Auth. I've used here secret and base URL from our end file. Then I have added trusted origins. This is the same our base URL variable. Then let's for now enable only credential-based authentication. So in order to do that, we have to say email and password and say enable true. And since I use TanStack Start, I have to add TanStack Start cookies plugin. And here most interesting part, we can seamlessly integrate our database with Better Auth. In order to do that, we can go to the documentation and we can see here that Better Auth allows us to create integration with MySQL, SQLite, PostgreSQL, MCSQL and MongoDB databases. And we can use the following adapters: Drizzle, Prisma or MongoDB. So I've chosen PostgreSQL and Drizzle ORM. So let's go to our end file, and what we have to do is add following variables in order to make a connection to our database: database host, port, username, password and database name. And what actually I did here is create a connection pool to my database using following variables from the end file, and then I created DB instance using Drizzle. And let's get back to our auth.ts, and what I did here, I used Drizzle adapter past our DB instance, and that's actually it. The next thing what we have to do is define our Drizzle config. So what we have to do is create drizzle.config.ts file and then use define config from the Drizzle kit. Then we have to say here the following things: the first output folder where we will be storing all our migration things and etc. In my case, it will be the root directory Drizzle folder. And by the way, this is the by default. This is the I was following the official Drizzle documentation, right? The next important thing, this is the schema path. Within this schema path, we want to store all our database schemas, right? In my case, it will be src database schema folder. Then we have to choose the database. In my case, this is PostgreSQL. Then indicate DB credentials, what we actually did in our connection pool, using host, port, user, password, database from our end file. Then we have to say SSL false and verbose strict to true. And now we have to do two more things. The first, we have to run our DB locally, using Docker Compose, and then we have to create our first migrations in order to use Better Auth schemas like users, accounts, sessions, verifications in our database. I've created a simple Docker Compose file in order to run our database locally, and here I've used our database credentials from our end file, right? The user, password, DB, and pers. Then we have to run our Docker Compose. It started successfully. We connected to our database locally, and we can see here that our database is empty. There's no any tables inside of it. Great, and what we have to do right now is generate our first migration in order to use Better Auth schemas in our database. In the meantime, let's add following environment variables to our project. Relates to Google OAuth authentication. If you use the Google OAuth, you have to be familiar with it. You have to create Console Cloud account and then configure the project in order to use OAuth authentication. And then we have to go to our Auth instance and say social providers, Google, client ID and client secret. And that's it. And let's go to Better Auth documentation, and what we can see here, that schema generation and migration. We can use the Better Auth CLI to generate the schemas. Let's just pass this command to our terminal, and it's ask us, do you want to generate the schema to Auth schema TS? I want to say yes, and we can see here that all of these tables has been generated in this file. Users, session, account, verification, with all of relations, indexes, constraints, and etc. So what I did, I just moved around these tables to my schema path, database schema, and created separated files, right? So I can get rid of this file, it's not neat anymore. And then in order to migrate these schemas, I have to import and add it to our database instance and save it. And then we have to go to our package.json file, and we have to add the following commands to our scripts. And let's pay attention to the two first two ones, db generate and db migrate. So essentially db generate command will generate the migration for us based on our schemas, right? We can see right now there's no Drizzle output folder, and when I execute pnpm db generate, it says 4 tables has been generated, account, session, user, verification, and the output folder has been appeared, right? And we can see here the migration SQL file. And then eventually we have to execute pnpm db migrate. And here we go. We can see that migration has been applied successfully. Then we can go to our table plus, refresh the data, and we can see that all of those tables has been applied to our database. Accounts, session, user, and verification. And that's amazing. So let's build UI and integrate our Better Auth things to our components. So I prepared a couple of pages in my application, sign in and sign up. And inside these pages, I'm using my forms, sign up form and sign in form. Yeah, but let's at first pay attention to our actions. Sign in and sign up. So what we have here, I define the ZOT schema and expect the name, email and passwords for sign up. And then, since I use TanStack Start, I'm using create server function from the TanStack Start. If you use Next.js, you just need to define the use server on the top of the file and then create the server function, right? But in my case, I will use the create server function. Then I invalidate the data using schema, and then I just call the sign up email function from the auth instance, right? And then pass the body and return the user. That's it. For sign in, it's mostly the same. I've defined sign in schema and expects email and password. Then I've created server function from the TanStack Start, invalidate the data, and call the sign in email from our auth instance. And then we have to pass headers to our API call from the TanStack Start server. That's it. Then let's jump to our components and see how we can actually use our server function inside our forms. First, what we have to do is define our result sign up form schema. In order, if our action fails, we'll display appropriate messages to the user, right? Like email is required, invalid email address, password things, and etc. Then, since I'm a big fan of TanStack ecosystem, I used the TanStack query with the TanStack form. And in order to make it works, what we have to do is wrap our server function with an use server function hook, and then just pass sign up function to our mutation. Then we define our form instance with all related values like name, email, password, confirm password, use our validation inside onSubmit, and then on submit handler, we just call our mutation, pass the data, and on success, we have to completely reload our page with navigation. And we have to do it because we have completely revalidate our server cookies. Because probably you will use some authentication middleware further, and to make it work, we have completely reload the page. And then on error, I just show the toss with error message. And then create handle submit and call form handle submit and pass it to our form. And that's it. And for sign in form, we mostly do the same. We define sign in form schema with email and password. We wrap our server function, use mutation, and create the form instance with email password, use validation, and on submit we following the same approach. We call our mutation, pass the data, and on success we completely reload the page with navigation, and on error we just show the toast with error message, right? And pass it to our form. And that's it. To demonstrate how it works, I created authenticated layout, and if user not logged in, we just redirect user to sign in form, right? We fetch the session from our server, and if there's no session, we redirect user to sign in form. And move our dashboard page under this layout to ensure only logged in user can access our dashboard page. And let's see how it works. Let's try and access our dashboard page, and we can see that our authenticated layout has been redirected us to sign in form. Let's see how our validation works. We can see that email is required, password must be at least 8 characters long, which is great. Then let's try to log in with a non-existent user. For example, this email, and login. And our server says invalid email or password, which is great. Then let's try to create the user. And click create account. And here we go. We have been redirected to our dashboard page. We can see all related information about my account and user. And let's go to the table plus, refresh the data, and we can actually see that our user has been populated to our database. We can see that my name, email verified false because we actually haven't verified email yet. Then let's go to our account table, and we can see that there's created a record with provider ID credential because we actually logged to our system with credential-based provider, right? Then let's go to session table. We can see that session populated as well, and verification hasn't been populated yet because we actually haven't verified our account. And what we can see here that we even didn't inserted any records to our database, right? All of those things securely handle Better Auth for us. And in order to log in with Google OAuth provider, what we have to do actually is create a new Auth client instance. By the way, this Auth instance has been designed to execute it on the server, right? But this Auth client is designed to execute it on the client. And then we have to create an instance calling create auth client function and pass the base URL from our environment configuration. And let's go to our action, sign in with Google. And what we have to do is import this client instance and say social, call social function and pass the provider Google and our callback URL, right? And that's it. And let's go to our forms. For example, sign in or sign up, it doesn't matter. Let's go to the bottom to our button, and we have to render the button and just pass our action to on-click handler, right? In both scenarios. Again, let's try and access the dashboard. We have been redirected to sign in. Then let's continue with Google. I'll pick my account. And here we go, we have been redirected to our dashboard page. We can see that our email is verified, right? Let's go to our table plus, refresh our data. And what we can see here, what is the interesting, that the verification table has been populated because we logged in with the Google OAuth provider and it by default verified, right? Then and let's go to our user and we can see that we still have one record to our database with this email, right? Because as I said earlier, user can log into the system with credential-based authentication, right? Or Google OAuth provider and using the same email. What actually I did in our case, right? I'm using this email and let's go to our account table and we can see that here's two records related to one user, right? With Google provider and credential provided. And this is lovely. We don't need even care about it, right? And then let's add advanced feature to our authentication process, which calls Google OneTap. What we have to do is import OneTap from Better Auth, and then in our Auth instance say plugins and pass the OneTap, right? And then go to our Auth client instance, import OneTap client from the Better Auth, and populate our Auth instance with this configuration. We have to say plugins, call OneTap client function, pass the client ID from our environment configuration, and set this simple configuration, right? And then let's add this feature only for our sign-in form, right? Let's go to our sign-in page, and then what we have to do is get the session from the Auth client use session hook, and then check if session is pending or is refreshing. If it's true, we just return. Then we have to ensure that there is no any session existed, and only then we have to call our Auth client OneTap function, pass callback URL, and in case of something went wrong, we just console var the notification. And that's it. So let's go to our browser and reload the page. Let's go to the dashboard, and here we go. We can see that our OneTap feature is working, and I just clicked to my account and I have been redirected to dashboard page. And this is lovely. And that's it. Use Better Auth. It makes your authentication setup secure, scalable, it's really fast to set up, and it's perfectly synced with your database. And most important, it's free and open source. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.